What's our budget for the LDC?
No.
Okay, we're back in regular session and looking to resolution number 8, authorizing the agency to exercise its option to purchase premises located in the town of Union, more particularly described as Broome County Tax Map number 110.03-1-20, present premises located in the town of Maine, more particularly described as Broome County Tax Map parcel number 110.01-1-22, and premises located in the town of Maine, more particularly described as Broome County Tax Map number 110.15-1, pursuant to the terms of an option agreement with Roseanne M. Della Penna dated November 7th, 2022, and to execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate the exercise of said option agreement. So I'm looking for a motion.
Moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Joe, second, discussion.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I had a practical question to start with is, there's been some discussion about 18-wheelers. But we're talking about 18-wheelers may not be going into that park, or what's the thought process of 18-wheelers going in and out of there?
I think as far as uses or what types of companies we would want to attract, I think number one, part of seeker will determine a traffic impact study, which is going to dictate a lot of the terms of what types of businesses we would want to actively market to. The transportation infrastructure on Airport Road has been less than attractive historically to anything that uses significant amount of large truck traffic, based on companies that we've brought to sites in and around the airport. So we would at this time conservatively project that this would be geared towards more manufacturing companies, supply chain companies, technology companies, those less than your traditional logistics types of
No, it's one,
businesses.
it kind of limits you a little bit on what will go in there, because it's not going to be geared toward 18-wheelers in that regard, but that's, that's just kind of a procedural.
We don't know though that Airport Road can't support 18-wheelers.
I think that would all become part of the traffic impact study as part of seeker.
Yeah, that's
There's heavy
well,
traffic.
a place like BMTS would probably be able to tell you that right away.
But we would be required to do our own traffic. impact
No, I know.
study,
I'm just
but
want to know if it's even possible.
I think the comment was made that this wasn't going to be geared to logistics companies. Which from there, people says, oh, you're not gonna have any heavy trucks. And that's not what was said, because I attended the meetings at the town of Union. I didn't go to the ones at the town of Maine.
It's safe to assume there's 14-wheelers on Airport Road today.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. So, but within the site, because I don't really have a handle on what the slopes are or anything, are there going to be any steep slopes on the roadway inside the site?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. There are some potential steep slopes which would require a fair amount of fill to mitigate, but we do think there are access points where we can mitigate any steep slopes. There is some land within the broader context that we may not wish to pursue for those reasons. It's really just where we would want to put entry points and exit points. That could be mitigated with fill. But I couldn't tell you the percent, slope at this point in time. I don't want to say something that would be incorrect.
Well, I'll tell you what my thoughts are. First of all, we're in a position we didn't want to be in. Obviously, you had a plan to do the due diligence, to get the options, continue the options to all the due diligence was done. And so we find ourselves in a situation where we have to do a lot of the due diligence. We have to purchase the property before the due diligence is done. We have to do the seeker zoning planning. I think the county has to do a 239 review. That needs to be done. I don't know if there's any other preliminary engineering that needs to be done, but so I mean, it's a tough position, because obviously the plan was to do this out and get it done. So we have to buy, and there's a lot of unanswered questions in the seeker and the 239 review, which the county I know goes over pretty tenaciously. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that, obviously we'd love to know in beforehand. At this point, the local officials have a limited understanding of the project, just by virtue of the timetable. So their level of support is uncertain. So again, we're buying a significant piece of property without knowing where the local officials stand. And again, it's what the situation we're in. Like I said in my email, where my experience as mayor was, no one would buy property in the city of Binghamton or initiate a development project unless they knew the city officials were thoroughly 100% behind it. They wouldn't buy land on the possibility that they could convince us to support it. So that's my concern. I think when we took eminent domain off the table, I think we limited our negotiation, our ability to negotiate. I think we hampered ourselves a little bit, even if we didn't want to use it. We could have, in poker, they call it bluffing. I just think that if we bluffed a little bit more, we could use eminent domain. And I remember at the time, the arguments against it were all arguments now being, saying that, all the arguments against it now are saying it's not a big deal if we want to do eminent domain for these other properties. It won't take too long. We can do it. We can get. So I think that the eminent domain, even if there was sentiment, we didn't want to use it. Now that's fine. Everybody has their own philosophy, but I wouldn't have taken it off the table. I would have tried to let them know that might have been a possibility. So I think we just find ourselves, I think we find ourselves that in a difficult position. The plan B is if this doesn't work, we can do it for a solar farm or housing, but at this point, that's speculative too. So, it's really a Hobson's choice. It's unfortunate. We've been put in this position. It's no fault, really of the agency. You had a plan, but that's my real concerns about being able to support it.
I think the mayor raises good concerns, but I think it's really important to note that we desired a longer option and just wasn't available to us. And the extension of option terms that are being offered to us are unreasonable. And therefore, I think this is clearly our best choice. And I think we've determined that there is value to this property in resale if we can't develop it the way we want. So I think, while it's not ideal, I think it's very clearly the best option for us and for our community.
I feel like there's a lot of things that can stop this project along the way. The primary one being lack of support from the towns. In my understanding, this has been on the table for at least a couple of years. That very preliminary site plan has been out there for a period of months now. I would feel a lot better if we could have gotten the town supervisors and their board members to at least say, I really like the idea of this. I'd like to see if this kind of thing could actually come to fruition. I mean, we can give them some options. The zoning changes are either going to be X, Y, or Z. There's going to be a lot of options. We can talk about the kind of businesses that we have in there, that we want to have in there. I think that's enough for someone to come out and say, yeah, I mean, conceptually, I like that idea. I would support that, without having a seeker done. And incidentally, the seeker, I don't agree that we have to own the land to do the seeker. We can get property access agreements done. I did that all the time when I was with the Department of State. I worked with municipalities all over New York State, and that's what we did. And it's never really a hard thing to do. I feel like this has been out there. If this has been on the table for so long, I feel like we're just not far enough along, or some of these things could have been answered by now. And I think it's a really bad position to be in, to feel like, geez, they've got us between a rock and a hard place. Now we have to do this. I think that, if we didn't decide to buy it today, eminent domain is still an option. Yeah, we're going to pay what we've already told them we're going to pay, but I think that's still an option. I know that I've heard it said, unless I'm mistaken, that they're under a little bit of pressure from other buyers for maybe a solar farm. I don't know if I actually believe that. I mean, anybody can say that. Is it, the other thing is, do we know, would the town support that? I can't imagine that that would be the first thing that they'd like to see there. I don't really think it's that big a danger that it's just gonna go away. It's been sitting there for basically forever with nothing happening to it. And all of a sudden, it's like, hurry up and do something and take a risk with $1.4 million. I feel like we have to be able to recoup our investment, and I don't see how that can happen. We can say, well, we'll just sell it to someone for a solar farm, but again, we don't know if the towns are gonna support that. So there's one place to stop it. Another place to stop it would be the 239 review after we've gone through everything. 239 review didn't used to be such a hard thing to do, but from what I hear, the last 4 years, things have changed. And they're giving everybody a hard time now, and they have stopped projects with it. The town boards can't even really vote on a zoning change until the 239 has been done. If the 239 has a negative opinion, they're gonna need a super majority to pass this. I think there's an awful lot of risk. I do want to see us pursue this. I'd like to see us move forward. But I just think there's too much risk. $1.4 million, it's not peanuts. I'm thinking about, as a board, we have a fiduciary responsibility. And, that's what's kind of hanging me up right now.
Thank you. Mike? I have to say, I feel very strongly both ways. I can see that. I think that we're limited as far as land for an industrial park. We don't have other options that we're looking at. I don't think you're risking the total $1.4 million. I don't know what percentage you are risking. I think it's a good project. I think I would be in favor of that, although I see everything that you're talking about that could be negative. I think I would vote to go ahead.
I'm looking for opinions. We started this 3 years ago. No offense, Elaine, with this, I mean, we're either gonna do this or we're not.
Well,
That's
that's
what
what
we're here to
concerns me
bring
is,
jobs and
that's what
potential
I'm concerned about.
businesses that
It's been on
Stacy and
the
the
table for a
agency's
long
been
time.
turning away for months and months and months, and we've had this discussion.
Mhm.
There is no plan B to go elsewhere.
Mhm.
It's not the airport, it's not Windsor, West Windsor. It's either this or nothing, and I thought that's what we're here tasked to do.
Mhm.
One way or the other, is gonna be a risk in everything, and everybody's not gonna get along with this.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
As much as. we
How
would
far
like
is this
that.
away from the highway?
About 1.5 to 2 miles.
So I'm thinking about, for example, the Charles Street Business Park. That never really took off. I mean, there are a few things there now, but it never really took off. And I know it's because of the lack of easy proximity to the highway. A question I do have is, what happened to all that land that the county owns just south of the airport? You've got 280 acres out there that the county owns, and they went to a great deal of expense to run utilities out there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share it with you, and it might have been prior to when you joined the board. We did an analysis of 3 sites. This area in question, the area in and around the airport, and then area in West Windsor. There is certainly developable land up there, but nothing that's congruent, because there's a myriad of wetlands that runs through much of that acreage. So you can find pockets of maybe 80 acres here and there, 50 acres here, and I'd be happy to send to you the slide where it's broken down. I know the county is pursuing a solar user because it tends to work well in some of the lesser, harder to develop, parcels as well. So those areas make a great spot for renewable projects like a solar project, and we can find the pockets of the land but you're not gonna find anywhere near 200, 300, 400 acres in a part in a.
Jim, I didn't know that. So the county spent, I don't know, millions of dollars running utilities out there for nothing?
Kind of.
It just-
No,
No, that's not true.
no, they
I used it.
save money by running it
Yeah.
to.
And-
I couldn't remember when it
enhances that entire corridor, and it'll help serve this park. So at the end of
I
the
mean, I
day,
know
you've
it
got
needed to be
sewer,
done now
you've
that I
got
think it had
water,
to be
you've
done
got
for the airport
power,
too.
and you got gas, which wasn't there before, so
Mhm.
it wasn't a waste of money.
And had they not made that investment to the airport, and again, there are parcels that are very valuable, it's just, we're talking. I mean, when you think about it, it is 40 years ago, next year will be 40 years since we the IDA ventured to build the Broome Corporate Park, the largest really single tract of land development that the county had, 600, ironically mirrored about 600 acres. It's taken, 40 years. We're still talking about filling the last, 2 parcels that make up maybe 25 acres. So, this is a generational project, it's going to take a lot of time. I mean, I think what we're building, we don't envision being built tomorrow, because we want to build it right. But it's also going to be, I think, a project that's going to set the community up for next several generations to bring in new investment, just as I think was the vision of the Broome Corporate Park 40 years ago.
Yeah, I don't want you to get me wrong. I'd like to see
Oh,
this
no,
happen.
understood.
I'm just not convinced that we can't
Yeah.
continue to pursue this.
And I
without buying it
will
today.
not, I certainly 100% will be in agreement that the biggest challenge to this, because it has been so long since anybody, ventured to do something of this magnitude, that there is the learning curve and the comfort level is maybe not there at this point in time. And we don't want to put the towns at this stage in a position to have to make a gut reaction, because we want to provide them the education and the resources and the vision for really what this is, vision both visually and, who we think we can attract and the impact, the long-term economic impact of that. So, our work, I think, is really in being very transparent. We want the public engagement. We plan to do a lot of public engagement in this process. We want to invite the public and the community to help us envision what this could look like physically. We want to find the right firm that can build something that fits with the natural landscape, that doesn't, have the impact that I think most people think right now. But, I want to be cautious and not put the towns in a position, because we have not made any formal requests. And we know that's really the most important part of that process is working with the towns and giving them the comfort level that we can build something that they can be as proud of as we can be, I think, ultimately.
Joe?
Yeah, a lot of good points being made. The reality is that we live in a county, and you guys hear me talk about it all the time, where our infrastructure is limited. So it limits our choices as to development. And that's just the reality of it. What I like about this parcel, I know you get tired of me here, but you got 2 of the main infrastructures you need: power and energy, gas and the electric. So when you look, you decide what choices you have. So the second thing I've been thinking about is, right, we got to spend this money, and there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. So whenever I do a development, I like to go in with the vision, but I also like to have an exit plan. And what makes me feel good about this property, mainly because of the industry I come from, I think we have a really viable exit plan here if we can't get what we want.
Which is what?
Which is a resell of the property. Because you have the gas and electric there, who knows, maybe someone private will come in and start their own thing. And the reality of it, right now, is this solar thing is just, there's so much money in it now.
Mhm.
And it's something that upstate's gonna have to deal with, because it's gonna take a lot of viable property off the market. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I
'Cause
I don't have anything
it's
against it, I just, we
it's
don't know
silly.
if the towns would support. it.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because we're running into one, the Cuomo administration took away, I don't even know what you call it, the local rights thing.
Article 10 signing.
Yeah, whatever that article is. So people think they have a lot of say in this stuff. And when push comes to shove, they just don't anymore.
Was that more for wind farms though? than
No,
solar?
it's just-
Is when, and now they're pushing it into solar. So that's the way I see it is, and I see this too, as the investment made up there, airport corridor. This could be a gateway to that corridor now, if you could get this going. It starts to feed off of it all the way up the gateway. So that's my take on it. I know there's a lot of hurdles, but I feel like it's a prudent investment because there is an exit plan.
Well, one other point is, let's say hypothetically there's an exit plan, but then where are we with a corporate park? After all this time, you might have land you can sell to housing or possibly solar farms, but then we're nowhere with a corporate park. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's, and the key, I've already made my points, but the key here is there's just so many variables that are unknown. All it takes is one of the zoning boards to say no.
But there's no better site we ought to be going after.
yeah.
Well, true,
Did our
if,
analysis.
yeah, but if all the variables were, if we had more, we have a lot of variables and a lot of question marks that make it risky, but, everybody has their own, everybody has their own opinion.
But
so.
we did do the studies and we sought after other property, right?
I understand.
Where it was.
I understand, well, like I said, we're in a difficult position because we have hope
Yeah.
to have more options. I mean, that's why we're in a difficult, you said this is the best of the three options. It is. I think it's a Hobson's choice. I just think it's the least of three bad options, but that's the only option there is. So anyway.
Yeah.
I have to go after all that. Look, you look at on the board, we're here for expansion and retention. Stacy, what led us to this point? Stacy, the agency has to give up or take a pass every month on opportunities that come our way because we have nowhere to cite property. Right? We heard an executive session from commercial real estate people that they don't even bring people to Broome County because there's nowhere to cite them. And we knew that was a problem when we began this process a few years ago. Right? And we did a study and we looked at the three largest, most viable, what we hope to be viable properties. And there was only one the one that scored was substantially better than any other, and that's the one we're considering. So it's clearly the best, most practical parcel. We entered into the option a year ago. My recollection was that we entered into that option to evaluate whether or not there were engineering reasons, environmental reasons that we couldn't do the project that would make our investment essentially worthless. I think we did the engineering, we crossed that hurdle. I don't think anybody thought we were going to complete seeker and the entire rest of the process in a year. And we knew at that time when we did the option that the landowner was not willing to go beyond what was in the option agreement that we all approved and we all signed. Or no, we didn't all sign it, but we all approved it. So, yeah, in a perfect world, would we all like this to be completely riskless? Of course we would. But that's not the world that we live in. And it's a significant amount of money. I think there's options. If Joe articulated him really well, he knows that part of the business. I think this is a better option for us now than to say, we're gonna let it go, and if we come back, we'll go after it with eminent domain. And if we have to have a parcel or two after the project is well established, at the parameters are defined and we need to do it, then we need to do it. But I don't believe that anybody that's sitting around this table believes that our starting point in this process ought to be eminent domain. There's just not a need for it. And I think I believe that it's probably not economically prudent. Maybe the buyer has other opportunities and maybe they don't. But if we're wrong and the other buyers are in the solar world, we're gonna be priced out of the market awfully fast. Right? Because the rates that which properties going for solar are substantially higher than what this option are for. So I don't want to call the bluff and be wrong. So for all those reasons, nothing in life is perfect, but I think this is, there's been a lot of work that went into this, enough work that I feel like we can make a very rational, prudent decision that sets this county on a track where we can actually have businesses come here and we don't have to say, go north, go south, but don't come here because we don't have land. We need to have land. If we don't have land, then we need to rethink why we exist.
Anything else?
I don't disagree with anything that's been said. You know, obviously, you know, this, you've done the studies and you know that, this is the best available land at this time. All of that is understood. I just wonder if there was a less riskier way to go about this. You know, so Dan, you said this has been on the table for 3 years. I just feel like I feel like,
We started discussing that?
Well, we did our site inventory analysis. That took about a year and then we.
Then we did this.
Yeah, then we did the grading and then. we
How
did-
much money have we spent on this and non-refundable
Mhm.
deposits, right, already?
50
How much did we spend?
in deposits, right?
Oh, on the.
Option.
on
Plus the,
option.
plus the studies, plus everything else.
A couple
Couple $100,000 already in.
right, so, I mean, that's kind of my point. If this has been on the table for at least 3 years, I feel like by now we could have and should have done a better job conceptualizing this to the town supervisors and the boards so that they could at least form it. I'm not saying, you know, you're gonna ask for it in writing. You know, even if, like I said, even if they said, yeah, I really like that idea, you know, let's continue to talk, but I think I could support something like that. Even if it was that. You know, yeah, you don't want to start out with eminent domain, but it's there for a reason. I think, you know, if say we decided not to purchase it today and immediately started eminent domain proceedings. And we can get those other things done in the amount of time that we would have. I mean, even in a few months, I think that we could come back to the town supervisors and show them some conceptual drawings and give them a little more information on the kind of industry that we want in there and get their input on that as well. Haven't really been part of this process, have they?
Yes, they have.
They have,
And I'm
okay.
gonna speak to that. As you know, I was a town supervisor, and if someone approached me, if Stacy or anyone else approached me, sitting as a supervisor, and you've conceptualized this, but you haven't given me any details, you haven't told me where the roads are going. You haven't told me how to protect my residents that are gonna bore the property. You haven't told me all the parcels you're gonna buy. You haven't told me what you're gonna put there, right? I would say to you, I'm open-minded to that. I'll wait to see the drawings. There's no way in hell I would give an opinion. I wouldn't give any support other than to say, I'm open-minded to it. Now, hold on a second, in meeting with, the other day I participated, or at least I listened, didn't say much at the meeting the other day, to the supervisors and their attorneys. Nobody in that group said, this is a bad idea, it's never gonna fly. What they said was, okay, we agree, you take the lead and you run with this thing. Why? Because we don't have the staff to do it, number one. And number two, why would we expend funds if it's gonna end up becoming a political football, which it may, we all know it may very well become that. But no one said at that time, this is a horrible idea, we won't support it. I've got 3 board members that are against it, et cetera. I didn't hear that. I've heard from a number of board members that have said they're open-minded to it. They like the fact that we're paying attention to the town of Union and the town of Maine, some for the wrong reasons, some for the right reasons.
And just for context, so we began going to work sessions and I go to town meetings at both towns to provide updates. And I will say, I trying to read the room, I think I know of at least one town board member on one of the towns that probably at this stage does not like this, but everybody has been very open-minded and asked a lot of questions in this process. So I think to John's point, I think everybody has been very open to the process but I think we all understand at the end of the day, it comes down to what we present to them and ask of them.
We got a lot of boxes to check. We all know that. I mean, you Lorraine better than most of the people at this table. There was a ton of boxes to check, and it comes down to how it's designed, how it looks, how we market it, and how inclusive we are in terms of the discussions, because it's gonna require public hearings and public events, so to speak.
Well, there'll have
It's
to be a
not
huge
perfect, we know
public
that.
education of it,
Absolutely.
because. When the county updated the comprehensive plan for the first 10 to 50 years, we had wide public participation. And the vast majority of people that did participate said that they want to see us preserve rural space. I'm not of that mind. I think we need to build what we need to build. I'm just telling you what the public was saying. And, they want to see development happen in the urban cores. Now, obviously, we know that that's, we're very limited there. I understand that, but they don't. So, I'm just saying that,
It's a feel good stuff.
you have to, there's gonna have to be a huge public participation in the
Yeah,
process.
agreed.
Because really their option with this parcel, nothing is not an option for them probably,
Mhm.
right, for landowners.
Mhm.
If it's not us, it's gonna be somebody else.
Mhm.
So they're gonna get a project from somebody. I think we can do probably a better job of managing, given that the corporate park that exists now is a combination, very similar in terms of the residential bordering it.
Yeah, we
comparable in
went- I was
size.
up there.
It's very somewhat similar. in that
Residents
regard.
that walk, because there's a walkway through the corporate park and there are residents that walk it.
But that's part of our communicate, I think needs
Yeah,
to be part of
agreed.
our communication is, of course, you would like it to remain exactly as is in perpetuity. But the current landowner has other plans. And whether it's us or somebody,
Mostly deer.
it's, yeah, right. If you want to keep it for deer, you guys need to get up a collection and get it to a conservancy.
With that in mind, shall we have a vote?
Yes.
All
Yes,
those
Mr. Chairman.
in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
I'm going to abstain. It looks like the motion carries. Looking for a motion, any old business? Motion to adjourn, Joe, second mayor, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to that?